What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Mind of Marsal podcast. This is episode number 101. I am your host, Armando Marsal. You can find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. Follow me on the Twitter machine at Armando_Marsal, as well as on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Mind of Marsal. Before I jump into it, I just want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. I greatly appreciate you all. Remember, folks, if you're enjoying the content, enjoying the podcast, please make sure you follow, rate, like, and review the podcast wherever it is you're consuming it, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Podbean, SoundCloud, wherever it is you're consuming it. Please make sure you rate, follow, like, and review the podcast. We are going to continue our team previews here. And as usual, I bring in my guy, Tyler Buecher. How's it going, brother?
What's up, Armando? Ready to talk some ball again with you. Excited to break down this AFC North division, which was a really fun one last year. A lot of turnover this offseason. Should be a fun one to break down.
Yeah, man. We talked about this last episode. I'm having fun breaking these teams down. It's obviously part of the process that we do every year. This year we're putting it on a podcast form, and obviously you're doing the written content. If you guys haven't checked that out, if you're only listening to this, make sure you check out Tyler's article there at fantasyguru.com. He's putting a written, like a written part of this podcast, the team previews on the site there. So make sure you're checking that out. You mentioned that we're going to be talking AFC North today. I think a very interesting division. We already talked about AFC East. We've talked about the AFC West. Those are episode 99, episode 100. If you haven't checked those out, make sure you go back and check those out. A lot of good information on those podcasts there, Tyler. But yeah, man, the AFC North, I mean, this is a very stacked division, right? Like this has a lot, like these teams, for the most part, I think you could say you look at these teams. Last year, you had three teams above 500. The Baltimore Ravens won the division at 12-5. Right behind them, Steelers were 10-7. The Bengals 9-8. The Browns are going to do Browns thing, right? They were 3-14. I'm expecting another subpar season from Cleveland. They still have some holes to fill there, but we're going to talk about that here today. We're going to talk about all of these teams in depth. And before getting into it, as usual, Tyler, give your overview on this division. Do you expect Baltimore to once again be the favorite in this division? I think we've been talking about their run as well, kind of like Buffalo, right? Like we kind of expected them to get over that hump. They still haven't gotten over the hump yet. You think this is the year that they get over that hump?
Yeah, they made back-to-back division titles here, posting a 12-5 record. I've been really, really impressed with Baltimore when I look at what they've done under their offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, what they've been able to do with elevating Lamar Jackson, who 2023 won the MVP. 2024, he narrowly missed his third MVP. His ability to go back-to-back with MVPs was just an astounding season for him. He finished second in Offensive Player of the Year as well. So I just thought Lamar has done really well here in this new offense, in this offensive scheme. When we add in their defense and what this defense did over the back half of last year specifically, I think these guys are certainly the front runners to win the division for the third straight year in a row. Certainly in line for double-digit wins. As far as other guys, Pittsburgh a 10-7 record. I think that's going to be tough to repeat here in 2025 with the unknowns there. Cincinnati, again, another team that could be tough to repeat there. They continuously get off to slow starts. Um, Maybe if they get off to a hot start in 2025, they can return to the postseason, but it's their defense which might hold them back. And then we talk about Cleveland. I think we're looking at a rebuilding year for them after a 3-14 season. So those are kind of my quick thoughts on the whole division as a whole.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Bengals. Like the Bengals went 9-8. They won their last five, right? Like that was the end of the season. They really got it together, but they started off so slow, and it's hard to get out of that hole with that kind of team. They have a lot of good pieces. They still have a lot of holes. They do have a lot of star power, but again, if you want to compete in this division, I truly think you got to get off to a hot start. It's hard to make ground in this division. Everyone's competitive here. We're going to talk about each and every one of these teams in depth, but I just wanted to get your overall quick thoughts on here. And we could jump right into it with Baltimore. I think we both can agree that they are the favorite to win this division again. I think they did a pretty good job this offseason, both in the draft and in free agency. When you look at, they addressed defense a lot, which was a necessity here. They addressed the defense. They started off with their first four picks were on the defense side of the ball. They also addressed the offensive line. I love the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. I think that that is one of those sneaky additions here. Like, am I expecting DeAndre Hopkins to be, someone that you rely on from a fantasy standpoint each and every week? Maybe not. But from a football perspective, I really do like this move. You get a veteran receiver, another weapon for Lamar Jackson. Um, I like that addition a lot. They added left tackle Ronnie Stanley. They added Adarius Washington, defensive back there. Fullback Patrick. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but I think like it's going to help with their run game, right? I do think that those kind of moves like that help with the run game. They obviously got Malachi Starks. They got Mike Green, which we had talked about on the live stream when we did the draft. They're obviously the injuries off the field stuff, whatever the case may be, the concerns, but you can take that kind of risk with these kind of players when you're in this team. So interested to hear where you're at here, but from an overall, like what you see, what they've done, do you like, what the Ravens have done here this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, re-signing Ronnie Staley, huge, huge. I mean, that's arguably the team's number one move here in free agency because there was a several different teams here that were in bidding wars to acquire his services. Yeah, $44 million guaranteed on a 3-year, $60 million contract. I think that was a huge get for them. Um, Hopkins, I think, like you said, was a smart ad for a veteran team hoping to make a late push in the postseason. I'm with you where I think Hopkins is probably just really going to fill the Nelson Aguilar role, where we'll see him put up sporadic spike weeks, some sporadic touchdowns, with the goal being for Hopkins to put up those touchdowns late in the year and particularly in the postseason. But I mean, this team is like locked and loaded. If they can continue to do what they did over the back half of last year, where they were the number one defense in terms of EPA per play allowed, this unit should be well set to put up another good year. I like the young players they added. Malachi Starks, he's kind of that free ranging free safety, allows him to pair up pretty well here with Kyle Hamilton on the back end to form quite a duo, and then Mike Green just adding some youth there. Kyle Van Noy's getting up there in age. Uh, yeah, I think they just need some extra pass rush help there. So I like their moves there. They had the most picks in this year's draft class, tied with San Francisco. So they definitely retooled their unit, multiple units, pardon me. But yeah, I think that what they did has them well poised for another run here for a title.
Yeah, and you look at this offensive line, you mentioned it, like this is a really good offensive line. They, they're at least their projected starting group is very strong. They added depth in the draft, and it wasn't that high of draft picks for some of these guys, but they did take a tackle with the third round, but
Mhm.
they added depth, right? And this is a team like you mentioned, they're built to win now, and they continue to get better. The rich get richer, right? Kind of the way to view this team here. As far as the backfield, it's Derrick Henry, right? Like, do you expect that they're going to utilize Henry as much as they did last year, or do you think that they would consider conserving him a little bit for the postseason run? I know we've had this conversation, off the podcast, but what are your thoughts on that?
I don't envision them slowing him down at all. I mean, this guy was just insane his first year in Baltimore running behind this offensive line. A stat line of 325 carries, 1,900 plus rushing yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, a career high 5.9 yards per carry mark. Finished the season as the RB4, which was 19.8 fantasy points per game. Super notable given his minimal usage in the passing game. Just a stud. Last year's Ravens, they were number two in EPA per rush, number two in rush success rate. And sure, volume fueled Henry's big campaign, but that's not going anywhere. He was also pretty efficient in my eyes too. RB7 in missed tackles forced per attempt, RB3 in explosive run rate. So for a guy up there in age like he is, this guy's pretty darn good at the position. Early round two ADP, I'm buying it once again. I mean, heck, you can even say in the postseason, I don't think he slowed down at all. He had a massive game against Pittsburgh to open the postseason, and then did pretty well against Buffalo in their follow-up game. Yeah, I think Henry is the centerpiece of this offense. Despite like Lamar getting the headlines and everything, this offense runs through King Henry.
And just to kind of add some more information there, like last year was the first time in his career he averaged at least one fantasy point per opportunity in PPR settings. So best season, like one of his best seasons, like really at this stage of his career. You mentioned it, 5.9 yards per carry. Like it's just a what an offensive line could do. What the fact that when you cannot stack eight in the box can do for a player. Um, I think that they will continue to lean on him. I think he'll be once again have a successful season. So yeah, I'm in lockstep with you when it comes to investing in this backfield here. Now, when you look at things behind Henry, right? We have Justice Hill, we have Keaton Mitchell. Any of these guys you look at as potential, we could say handcuff if you want, or as late round flyers, even if you don't get Henry. Are you interested at all besides Henry in anyone in this backfield, Tyler?
Well, Justice Hill had a 10.8% target share last year, which it's not sounds like a lot, but it was 3.0 targets per game. That was good for the fifth best among all players here in Baltimore. So I think getting the pass catching back here definitely makes a lot of sense. Um, but I prefer that specifically only in best ball formats where we don't need to really figure out when the seven catch games come from Hill or when he's able to break one for a touchdown. But no, there's not really a traditional handcuff here in my eyes for what Baltimore offers and what Henry offers specifically. He's just such a unicorn. Um, Hill's just more of Justice Hill being much more of just a ancillary piece to that. So I'll be taking some swings in best ball formats as a late round rookie, or I'm sorry, late round receiving running back. But other than that, no, there's not really a handcuff situation here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. Like this is one of those situations where we get asked, "Oh, do you?" I don't see the need in handcuffing here specifically. I know that we're getting one running back in Derrick Henry that's getting an abundance of opportunities, but the problem is the replacement behind Henry. They're not going to get those same opportunities. You'll see the game plan, and the play calling. It will be much different than when Henry is back there if Henry were to miss any time for whatever reason that is. So, like, I agree with you 100%. When you look at this receiving group, last year we saw Zay Flowers 25% target share behind him. Rashad Bateman had a 16 and Mark Andrews 15% target share. With Hopkins in the picture, do you see that disrupting Zay Flowers' 25% target share? Or do you still think Flowers will be in that range of that 20 to 25 range?
Yeah, I still think he'll float actually closer to the 25 range. I don't think his target share is really going to be impacted that greatly by the addition of a guy like Hopkins, who I think he really just does take the Nelson Aguilar role. We saw Bateman also kind of emerge late last season. Keep in mind, Flowers, Bateman, both round one draft picks, both guys that this team has backed in terms of the capital and the playing time, and they've been rewarded. I think they've done pretty well over these past few years. Just keep in mind, this is just not a huge passing pie in Baltimore. They were 28th in pass rate over expectation, 31st in pass attempts per game. Flowers' 24% target share is notable. It was the 15th highest in the league, but his 6.8 targets per game, when we translate that to what actually occurred, was 39th. So big jump there from 15th to 39th when we look at it in terms of the volume. And subsequently, Flowers' week to week fantasy production oscillated like crazy. So boom week here, dud there. Boom week here. This is just a guy that I think is really contingent on creating plays via yak, yards after the catch, and efficiency. And I don't envision that efficiency going away. But when the volume is sparse, that means we're going to see some weeks where Flowers just does not return fantasy friendly outings. I'm still buying the 24 to 25% target share. I don't think that's going anywhere, but just keep that in mind if you're investing in Flowers. There's definitely some volatility here.
This reminds me a lot of our conversation about Khalil Shakir. Like it was a high percent target share,
Yeah.
but the volume is just it's 6 to 7 range targets per game. Um, yeah, I'm viewing Flowers, but our wide receiver two slash wide receiver three-ish, kind of in that top, I would say top 30 range for you.
Yeah, his current ADP is wide receiver 27, so spot on.
Yeah, yeah. So that kind of what we kind of expect. Yeah, he was finished wide receiver 24 in PPR settings last year, 28 the season before. So kind of where he's at, kind of where he's going. I think it's a fair price, but I think you mentioned it like the way you put it is if you're investing in Flowers, understand like last season he had 3 games of 20 plus fantasy points, but he also had a handful of games of sub 10, PPR points. So like that is what you're investing in, and you just have to be comfortable with that. I feel more comfortable with him in a best ball format for that reason. But even in in a season long format as a wide receiver three, so long as I got to like it depends on your wide receiver build, right? If you're going to be investing in Flowers or not. But I do agree with you. I don't think the target share goes anywhere. I think if anything, like you go back, he had 4 touchdowns last year, so he's really not touchdown dependent. And I think that's where he'll would have taken the biggest, hit if he was a very touchdown dependent player, because I do think Hopkins will have a nice role in the red zone. I think they'll utilize him there, and they also have other pieces there. But I think Flowers, the presence of Hopkins is not going to impact Flowers all that much. So I agree with you there when it comes to that. Bateman, do you view him as a like high variance play as well? Like,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
So this was a team last year that finished 32nd in rate of 11 personnel. That means they just didn't have a lot of three receivers on the field. It was under 30%, 27.8%. So they were just often running the two tight end sets with Likely and Andrews, which often meant that a guy like Nelson Aguilar as that third receiver was rarely seeing the field. Like 10 to 20 routes or so per game was about what we could come to expect. And I'm expecting that to be Hopkins' role, 10 to 20 routes, occasional games of 5 targets, more likely in the 2 to 3 range, with Bateman probably still maintaining his role where he had a 14% target share, about 4 or so targets per game. But Bateman's drawing the volatile targets. He's drawing the downfield ones where there's a lot more boom bust here. And it's tough because he's not an elite target earner to ever want to put him in a redraft start sit format. So he's like really just best ball only kind of format target for me. What are your thoughts on Bateman? Because I liked what I saw last year. I just wish he got more volume.
yeah, it's the problem with him is volume, right? And in this offense, is he going to get that kind of volume? I don't think so. I like him in best ball formats as well. Prefer him in that kind of setting than because look, at the end of the day, like if you draft him in a redraft league, you're going to find yourself with him on your bench when he has that big game, and then the following week you're going to be like, oh, maybe he's going to do it again, and then he comes out, just does very little, and I feel like you're going to be on within that pretty much all season long, right? Like I don't see a scenario where there's going to be a consistent amount of targets outside of multiple injuries on this offense, but where there's a consistent amount of targets for Bateman to give you a solidified week to week floor, given the how this offense operates. Because we're still going to talk about Mark Andrews, we're still going to talk about Isaiah Likely. Like there are other options in this offense in addition to Bateman. They added Hopkins. We talked about Zay Flowers. We know they like to run the ball, so like there's only one football, right? Like there's really only one football. And that's the tough part about these kind of offenses. Yeah, I like Bateman. I like the talent. I was big on him when he was coming out of college, but just there's only one football, and this is not a team that is going to sling it as much. And then you have to think like if their defense improves, like how often are they going to be playing with a lead this year? Like, I think that plays a role here too, right? Because I know when they've been hurt and they're in defense and they allow a lot of points and stuff, but when their defense is healthy and they're playing their best game, this is a really good unit. So I think that also has to be taken into account here when we project for some of these players. But any thought on that? Like, do you agree that as far as if this defense improved, this team might not be in those kind of game scripts that is going to force him to throw the ball a ton?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they'll be happy to run the ball when they have the opportunity to do so. Um, but it also means that a lot of eight men in the box, a lot of good plus looks for Bateman on the outside, one on one. Um, so I mean, yeah, he may just see less volume, but looks he does get, they're going to be probably one on one and probably in opportune spots for him to put up a big chunk gain. I think he had 16.8 yards per reception last year, which was pretty phenomenal. That and his 9 touchdowns stood out quite a bit.
Yeah, he had some big games. I mean, I'm looking at the numbers now. Like, yeah, the 2 games of 20 plus fantasy points of PPR scoring. He had 2 games, 2 other games of 17 plus. Like, there's some peak weeks for him. Um, you're just very inconsistent. Like, best ball, yes, 100%. I think he makes a lot of sense in Raven stacks too. Um, but redraft settings where you're really making lineup decisions every week, I feel like he's the kind of player I tend to shy away from it because of the inconsistent week to week target share.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about these tight ends here because we saw last year a kind of a shift, right? Like we saw Isaiah Likely much more involved. He played in 60% of the snaps. Mark Andrews played in 62% of the snaps. Mark Andrews, 15% target share. Isaiah Likely, 14% target share, 4.3 or 4.1, I'm sorry, targets per game. For Andrews, 3.6 targets per game. For Likely, Andrews still had a good season, right? Like he still had a good season because he scored 11 touchdowns, and that propelled him to tight end six in PPR scoring. Finished with 673 yards, 55 catches. Like, so the bottom line was good, but if you were a Mark Andrews owner, you know that it came with some very frustrating weeks and not that consistent floor that he gave us in previous years. Do you think that we're going to continue to see his kind of production decline a little bit this year? And not because of, I know he's getting up there in age, but more so because there's an abundance of weapons on this offense, and you can conserve this kind of player who's been around for the postseason instead of, peppering him early on in the season with a ton of targets. Like, do you envision that this upcoming season with someone like Mark Andrews?
I almost see a passing of the baton to Likely, where Andrews is entering the final year of his contract. You talked about his target share around 14 to 15%. That was a massive drop. I mean, look at the last 5 years before that: 22, 27, 26, 25, 24. This guy's continuously flirting with what, like back end wide receiver one target shares. And for him to drop all the way to 15% is precipitous. I think the move for Likely, we saw that hot start in week one. Everyone chased him off waiver wires. We said, don't go doing that. People still did it anyway. Blew 15% of their fab for no reason. Sure, Likely got out and had the big game. He also had career highs in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. But it was 42, 477, and 6. That's a fine stat line. That's fine. Whatever. You're not excited to go spend 50% of your fab to go chase that. But I think these two just simply cannibalize each other's production. It's going to be a frustrating start sit format the entire year. I think we got super lucky for anyone who drafted Mark Andrews to get by with all those touchdowns last year. And as such, I just don't think those touchdowns are something you can bank on. So I'm going to be fading this duo. I'm really not interested in drafting here in redraft, where in years past, I was clamoring for Andrews year after year after year. I thought he was a great player, and I thought Lamar was underrated. At this point, I think Lamar is now flush with options to target. I think this passing attack is firing on all cylinders now with Todd Monken. So yeah, I'm kind of out. I don't think we really want to spend money here. If you're trying to be ahead of the curve, maybe you go out and try to buy Isaiah Likely in Dynasty, which he won't come cheap. People are aware that Mark Andrews is toward the end of his career, but I think that's the move here instead of trying to target these guys in redraft.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think going after Likely in Dynasty, I don't mind Likely in best ball. Where is he coming off the board on underdog right now? Is he a top 12 tight end being drafted, or is he outside the top 12?
Andrews is tight end 8, and Likely is tight end 16.
Okay. See, like I don't mind taking some swings at Likely in a best ball format because I do think he'll have some peak weeks.
Yeah, I'll be doing it
Um,
on FFPC, not underdog.
okay. So yeah, there you go. I don't think we've talked about Lamar Jackson, but I mean, there's not much we could say that whoever's listening to this podcast, they don't already know. What, top three quarterback on your board?
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can argue number one if you want. He
Yeah.
finished last year leading the position in fantasy production. Well, I've just been really impressed with his steps forward as a passer with what Monken's been able to do. So over the last 2 years, I've talked about the MVP candidacy, but over this 2 year span, 67% completion rate, 8.4 yards per attempt mark, 7.0 passing touchdown rate. He leads all quarterbacks in lowest turnover worthy throw rate. He finished sixth in completion percentage on throws specifically over the middle of the field, which I know some people like to dunk on him for. This dude can hit every single level. I love Lamar. I think he's a great fantasy asset, and I really think he's just like in his bag right now. As long as he stays healthy, we are looking at a guy that's for sure a top five fantasy asset in 2025.
And you didn't even mention that he's rushed for over 800 yards back-to-back seasons, and he's rushed for over 700 yards in every single year besides 2018, his first season in the NFL. That season, he missed it by 5 yards, 695. You also get that in addition to the passing. Last year, career high 41 passing touchdowns. I don't think that should be overlooked. Like, I do not think
Yeah.
he only threw 4 interceptions. Like, you mentioned this 67% completion rate the last 2 seasons. Those are career highs for him. Back to back posting career highs in completion percentage. I agree with you, man. Like if you take Lamar Jackson off the board as the first quarterback, I'm not going to argue with you. Like I think you can make a case for him. I think you make it. We've talked about Josh Allen already. Like, like 1A, 1B, right? I really do 1A, 1B when you're looking at these two quarterbacks there. Anything else here in Baltimore that we haven't discussed that you want to talk about?
I think we hit the major heavy hitters here. It's again, this offense just 31st in pass attempts per game. It's really just gonna limit how much volume and how far we want to be spread out in terms of the pass catchers.
I'm just gonna say one thing. They did draft a kicker. All right. If you're in kicker leagues, Tyler Loop looks like he's gonna be kicking for Baltimore this season. So there's that. I'm not really gonna have a deep conversation about kickers though. I'll just all right, let's go to Cincinnati. I love this team because I'm a big fan of Jamar Chase. They were able to re-sign him, obviously getting the big contract. They took care of T. Higgins as well. You got Joe Burrow, like they brought back my guy, Mike Gesicki. Like I'm digging this. All right. I am digging this here. Um, my big concern when it comes to Cincinnati is the offensive line has continued to be an issue. And when you look at it, yeah, they took a tackle, they took a guard in the third round here of this year's draft, but I still think it's a point of concern on this offense for me. Protecting Joe Burrow has been something they've been incapable of doing throughout his career for the most part. How do you envision this team in 2025, Tyler? Like, do you think that they've improved in the offseason, or do you still think they have some holes here? You're on mute.
Oh, shoot. Great point there about the offensive line. They are 32nd in ESPN's pass block win rate last year, so I'm with you there where a turnaround is needed. They kind of jettisoned the entire right side of their line. They let Trent Brown go. They let Alex Kappa walk. Instead, they brought back Amarius Mims, last year's round one selection. He'll be slated to start at right tackle. Cody Ford, I think he'll slide over to guard, who played a little bit of tackle last season for them. But yeah, the big moves were at pass catcher. Jamar Chase with that massive contract. T. Higgins, the massive contract. Even Mike Gesicki, the big contract. Um, I like what the line does here in terms of just shaking things up because last year I feel like they can only go up from here. Um, Adding some health at running back also made sense to me. Zach Moss, Samaje Perine. Um, they brought back Moss. They added Perine. They've added some guys in the draft, Taj Brooks. Um, I think these guys can really help Chase Brown, who came off a spectacular year. Over the last 8 weeks of the season, this guy was averaging an absurd amount of touches and opportunities, nearly 21 fantasy points per game. Like just slid right into an RB1 role for fantasy. Elite productivity. I think they're very eager to see him in a full-time capacity role once again. But I'm more excited to see him behind a line that's improved. I'm really eager to see this right side in 2025 and hope that they can take a step forward because last year just felt like rock bottom.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like Chase Brown, like once he got going, there was no slowing him down. Like you saw him go, and it's like, all right, Zach Moss, it was a fun ride. But we are now we're abandoning ship and we are jumping on to the other one that's going full throttle here. So yeah, I think Chase Brown, um, another year under the belt here for him. I think he's going to continue to produce at a high level. I'm very excited about this offense. Now, P. Ryan, I think it's interesting because he's been around here before and he knows he knows the team, he knows the offense or whatnot. Um, would you be surprised if he ended up being the guy behind Brown ahead of Moss, or do you still think Moss is going to be that RB2 there?
Yeah, well, Moss enters banged up, so I imagine it could be P. Ryan that does take that role right away. Taj Brooks, I think, is also a candidate to be in the mix, a round six selection for them in this year's draft. He set the record for most rushing yards at Texas Tech. So I mean, he could be a sneaky candidate as well. I've done one FFPC draft so far. It's still kind of early in the offseason, and I took P. Ryan in one of my late selections, hoping that he's that guy. But yeah, I think there's definitely some room for somebody to emerge behind Chase Brown, who's kind of on the slender side. So adding an RB2 of note makes sense.
Yeah, and it's insane because if you look at, the week by week, like over the season, yeah, he averaged a little bit over 18 opportunities per game, but like from week 4 on, it was over 20 opportunities per game for Chase Brown. You think he could sustain that in 2025, like that kind of volume? given his size.
Well, it's interesting with them because I think they're going to really set him up to run in plus opportunity situations where they have like hats or numbers on blockers. Um, Brown, well, let's keep in mind the Bengals last year, they were number one in pass rate over expectation. This team loved to drop back and throw the ball. That's nothing new for Zach Taylor offenses. That's not going to go away. So whenever they do run the ball, I think they're really only doing it in opportune spots where they, again, this is a team that loves to go three wide, four wide, spread defenses out horizontally and create some room in the box for Brown to rip off big chunk gains. You include his usage in the pass game where the final 8 weeks of the year, whenever he was the starter, he averaged 4.8 receptions per game. Almost 5 catches per game. That's ridiculous in PPR formats. No reason, no shock that this guy was averaging 21.0 fantasy points per game to close the year. Just elite productivity, elite usage. I think he's not going to be a guy that sees 20 carries a game, 20, 25 carries a game. That seems way out of reach for what they want to do. Um, but I mean, if he's in line for the 15 to 18 carries and five or so catches per game, yeah, I think he's going to be very, very nice for your fantasy squads. He's RB11 right now in fantasy uh, drafts right now over on Underdog. RB11, he's going off the board at 30.4 ADP, so middle of round three. Very comfortable with that selection.
I think so. Yeah, I at that point you have two probably elite receivers, and you could go with Brown, who can be a complete game changer for you, right? So I don't mind that at all where he's going. I don't think that's inflated given his production last year, over 1,000 yards from scrimmage, but it was 295, I think, or 294 opportunities. Like, I think the opportunities are going to be there again. I agree with you. I don't know if he's going to get 20 plus rush attempts per game or anything like that, but I think 14 to 17, 15 to 18, like you said, I think that seems very feasible with 4 to 5 targets, or receptions per game. Um, that's definitely in his wheelhouse here. Are you handcuffing this backfield?
No, because I don't think it's clear yet. I think it's fine to take swings in best ball tournaments where that uncertainty creates the opportunity to make these types of swings where not everyone will have them. So they could be a low owned handcuff or a low owned replacement player. But yeah, I think it's a tough selection here. How about you?
I'm not handcuffing this situation at all. No, unless like you said, we get more clarity, sure. But at this moment, not enough clarity for me. So I'm in lockstep with you when it comes to the handcuffing situation. Let's talk about the receivers. I mean, Jamar Chase, wide receiver one off your board again this year.
For sure. Yeah, I think you can make the argument he's the number one overall pick. No argument for me coming off that triple crown. And man, this guy is just 10.1 targets per game last year. Only Malik Neighbors had more volume per outing. No stranger to the 20 plus PPR mark on a given week. Yeah, dude, I think we don't need to overthink this one. Chase is a clear target hog in an offense that wants to pass the ball heavily. And this defense, I think, is well, they have a new defensive coordinator. They've got troubles with Trey Hendrickson. They've got troubles at linebacker, troubles in the secondary. There's a chance that they'll be contending for one of the worst defenses in the league in my eyes. So we could see a lot of passing volume out of necessity, just ramped up even more so with this style of play. So yeah, Chase 101, no argument here.
175 targets last year, man. Like that's insane. He averaged 2.3 PPR points per opportunity. He did that in his rookie campaign as well. Um, yeah, he was my number one overall last year. I'm going number one overall again this year. I think he was my highest owned player in best ball last year, and I foresee that, although it's not going to be a secret this year. Like he's going number one in a lot of drafts this year. So no secret there when it comes to Jamar Chase. I'm on board. How do you feel about T. Higgins in 2025?
Yeah, I feel like T. Higgins has a lot of like detractors for some reason. Maybe it's because he has the wide receiver two stigma. But last year, averaged 9.1 targets per game, 18.7 fantasy points per game in the 12 games he played. I mean, touchdowns elevated his fantasy output for sure, 10 total scores. But that's going to happen in an offense that wants to pass the ball heavily. This team was number one in passing yards, number one in pass rate over expectation, number one in passing touchdowns. I like the number two option in the most pass heavy offense in the league. Yeah, so sign me up for Higgins. He's pricey though. I will say that. Wide receiver 12 right now on underdog. He's going at 23 overall in ADP, so right at that 2-3 turn. Um, kind of pricey, but I imagine he'll be much cheaper in redraft leagues, home leagues come August.
I think so too. I think in best ball, a lot of people probably stacking this team, so taking
Yeah.
shots on him early makes sense. I would assume that that's what's going on there. Um, I don't think you're going to pay that kind of premium. I look. I think if T. Higgins was in on another team, he could be the number one receiver. I think he has the skill sets to be a number one receiver on another team. He's just behind Jamar Chase, and you're always going to be the second option when you're behind Jamar Chase there. So, um, he averaged two PPR points per opportunity as well. Like he's highly productive when he's, like the kind of player he is. He's highly productive. This is T. Higgins. Well, the biggest issue with me is more can he stay on the field for an entire season? Like that's the biggest issue when you look at it. Like last year he played 12 games. The year before he played 12 games. He played 16 and 22, missed a couple of games in 2021. Like there's history here of him like not being 100% for an entire season, and it's happened for most of his career. So that would be my only knock on him. But I agree with you, man. Look, you have a 25% target share last year, 18% the year before, 19, 24, 19. He's involved in this offense. I feel like this is an offense where you know where the ball's going when it's in the air. And it's either going to go to Chase or Higgins. Like the other pieces are not going to get consistent volume like Higgins is. And when you have the best defenders on Chase, you're going to get a lot of good looks for Higgins here against opposing defenses. So I do think he's expensive, but I do like his outlook in 2025 so long as he can stay healthy. And the fact that, the contract and the financial stuff is all behind this, I think that's a big plus as well for someone like T. Higgins here in 2025. My guy, Mike Gesicki. Listen, I told everyone it wasn't going to be pretty. And it wasn't going to be consistent, but there was going to be a way he gets slides into being a relevant tight end last season. And I think he did that. I think he did do just that. I think if you invested in him in best ball, I think you were happy given the results, from his production. They bring him back. I think, again, do I think he offers a safe, steady floor? No, I don't. Do I think he's going to give you some pretty good spike weeks? I do. Um, Talk to me about Mike Gesicki, man. You know I'm a Gesicki guy. I invested in him. He was my highest owned tight end last year. So where are you at with Gesicki?
Yeah, I mean the same thing we talk about T. I think you can say for Gesicki here, where it's just a pass-heavy offense. Gesicki can essentially operate as that big slot for this team, and he's much more of a route running tight end over a pass blocking option. He led all tight ends in route participation rate last year, 93.3%. So less than 7% of snaps he was blocking. So that's great. Add in the notable contract extension. Yeah, I mean we're looking at a fantastic pass catcher. When I look back at the 5 games with Higgins off the field. Just like he averaged 7.2 targets per game and 13.8 fantasy points per game. That's a rate that would have been top five among all tight ends. So when it comes down to it, I don't really think we're looking at a third receiver here. We're looking at Mike Gesicki as the third pass catcher and the third top target earner in the squad. So yeah, I think he's a fine selection here, and you're not paying anything for him right now in drafts. You're able to get him for free at the tail end of stuff.
Yep, I agree completely. You mentioned that no really third receiver here you're interested in. I'm not. You Silva. Are you in on any other receiver here?
You didn't get anything from Yoshi last year. You if he reached the end zone, you were happy, but that's it. No, he's just a small. He's the small slot. He's the low A dot guy. Uh, Jermaine Burton. We thought he could be something, but he's having trouble staying. Uh, he's having trouble. I'll just say that he's having trouble. Charlie Jones. I think he's just more of a depth piece. None of these guys are really fantasy relevant in my eyes in typical redraft or best ball formats. So no, I'm kind of out on the rest of these guys.
As am I. I'm out as well. Who I'm not out on, my guy Joe Burrow. All right. I I for me, like if you're investing in a quarterback that's not like incredibly mobile and you're looking for potential top three, top five, that's Joe Burrow for you. Like I feel like he's the one that gives you that biggest, chance to do so of the non-running quarterbacks, right? And the reason why is because you mentioned it. He's gonna have to throw a bunch. And then you have two receivers in Chase and Higgins. Like you have a very good supporting cast from that perspective. He finished, I mean, QB2 last year, 43 touchdown passes. He has over 30 touchdown passes in 3 of his 5 seasons in the NFL. To me, like I'm sure I know his ADP is higher than what it was last year. Last year he was pretty much a free square where he was going, in my opinion. I'm still buying Joe Burrow this year, man. Like I feel like he's part of that tier of quarterbacks that I'm willing to take a little bit earlier in drafts. Where do you stand with Joey B?
You remain a bit more bullish on him than I do, just because I typically gravitate more towards mobile QBs, and Burrow doesn't have that skill set. Um, but I don't really have anything negative to say aside from that. That's it. It just means that whenever he doesn't throw for multiple touchdowns, which he tends to do more often than not, that the floor is a bit lower. Um, yeah, I think this defense is really going to just set him up to be in a throwing situation 3 quarters a game, 4 quarters a game. Um, yeah, I mean, he just had such a spectacular season last year, career highs across the board in attempts, completions, passing yards, and passing touchdowns. Not only were they career highs, he led the league in all four of those categories and won comeback player of the year. I can only knock on him so much because he doesn't have the rushing skill set because he has everything else you look for. But quarterback five right now in ADP, he's going 2 spots after Jalen Hurts. Joey B going at pick 52 overall.
I, I'm buying there. Like that's round five right there. I think last year was going around 7 or 8, and you were
Yeah.
getting him much cheaper. So like that was for me, that was you don't say free score, but that was kind of like a free square because it's just because the ceiling that he brings to the table. And we kind of saw that last year. I think we did get ceiling, or close to ceiling numbers from him last year. 71% completion rate, man. That is impressive for someone who threw 652 passes, man. Like that is just mind-boggling to me. Um, just what was it, 72 yards, if my math is right, shy of no, wait, 82 yards shy of 5K. Like that's he's gonna get 5K this year. Let's do it. Let's go. Come on. Let's root for that, especially if he has to throw 700 times. um Anything else here with Cincy? I mean, I think this is a team that's pretty straightforward, man. Like you invest in the back, right? The running back Chase Brown. You Chase is the number one overall pick in most drafts. I'm taking them number one overall. Higgins, good investment. Joe Burrow, good investment. Jaceki, high variance play that's gonna give you some peak weeks. Outside of that, I don't there's not much for me here, man.
I'll take some late flyers on Samaje Perine and Taj Brooks. Um, but yeah, they're just late flyers, and it's really just best ball only. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm good. You think P Round will get some like pass catching stuff and things like that out of the backfield
yeah.
from
I mean,
time
we
to
saw it
time?
with the Chiefs. He was a big bodied option that played well in the red zone. He's got that skill set to like kind of do everything. So I think he's just kind of a fine click. He's kind of older. I think he's entering his age 31 season, if I'm not mistaken. So we're probably not going to see explosive gains from him, but he does it all where I think he endears himself to a coaching staff, particularly this one because he was brought back.
Yeah, I agree with that right there. All right, let's jump to the Cleveland Browns here, Tyler. Yeah. It's so they had some key losses. They lost Jameis Winston. They lost Nick Chubb, James Hudson on the offensive line there, Elijah Moore, uh, DTR, Dorian Thompson, Robinson, for those that know, cornerback Mike Ford. So obviously some key losses there. They obviously the draft I think was surprised everyone when they took Dylan Gabriel over Shador Sanders, and then they ended up taking Sanders anyways, Tyler. They did address the running back position, bringing in Quinshin Judskin there. I'll be honest, man. Like it, there aren't many players on this team that I look at and I say, man, I really want to draft this player. When you look at the quarterback situation right now, you got our boy Joe Flacco, you got Kenny Pickett, you got Dylan Gabriels, and you got Shador Sanders there. Uh what are you doing with Cleveland, Tyler?
Throwing your hands up, throwing your hands up in frustration. This team was just so poor, dead last in passing efficiency last year between Watson, Winston, and DTR. You can add injuries to the offensive line, really kind of held them back from taking a step forward. The rushing attack was like non-existent. Like the Nick Chubb returning from injury, we kind of all projected him to take a step backwards in terms of his explosiveness. And that's exactly what played out. Um, I'll say it's tough to turn over a new leaf when you set the NFL record for most guaranteed contracted money to Deshaun Watson, and things unfold the way they unfolded. But this offseason for General Manager Andrew Berry, I think he did a good job in terms of trying to turn things around. You mentioned all the players they let go of. I think it kind of just sets them up for a new era. They traded for Kenny Pickett. We'll see if he can contend too. It's a crowded QB room for sure. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on all offseason. But Judkins, Dylan Sampson, Harold Fannin, I like these offensive players they added in the draft. They've got some juice, they've got some playmaking ability, and the only direction from here is up. I'm trying to be a little bit optimistic here. It's just really, really tough with this unit. So I think we just need to pick our shots sparingly and be wise when we do.
If you had to choose who's the week one starter for this unit, who would you say it is?
I think we could see some playmaking from Gabriel and Sanders in camp. They're already doing rookie mini camps right now. Both these guys are splitting snaps and opportunities. Both are looking good, but I mean they're in shoulder pads. Like they're not really. I'm sorry, they're in shorts. They're not even in shoulder pads. So they're just going through the motions right now. But I think my early lean is Flacco, where they kind of just want to see how things play out year one. Again, this is a new offense that's also being installed.
Correct.
We're also going to have to take that at face value, where they let go of Ken Dorsey. They brought in Tommy Reese, who was last year's pass game coordinator and tight ends coach. But prior to that, he spent time at Notre Dame and Alabama. So we're looking at a new offensive system being implemented here, where the offenses that Reese ran in the collegiate game were more of the two tight end sets. So maybe we see a lot more of Njoku and Fannin out there together. And those are the guys we want to prioritize for fantasy over like the wide receivers. Um, I'm going on and on here, but it's just kind of tough to get super, super excited here. I think Flacco can at least let this offense try to gain some kind of rhythm. Maybe at some point we see a turning of the keys over to like Gabriel or Sanders, but if I had to take a guess here, who makes the most starts over the course of the season, which is a different bet than the week one starter, I'm going to go with Sanders. I think he has a chance to maybe play with his chip on his shoulder now. Hopefully, it's motivation going round five. I just can't get on the Gabriel train. Like he's 5'11". He is kind of like former Oregon QBs of yesteryear, where they are there for so long that he just is able to come out and be pro ready, kind of like Bo Nix was, kind of like Justin Herbert was. Um, but it's really tough to succeed in this league at 5'11". So I think that's really going to be a hurdle for him, and perhaps that's why we see Sanders out there sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it'll be Flacco week one. But that doesn't do anything for me when it comes to the rest of this offense or anyone from this offense. You mentioned investing in the tight end. So David and Joke was still on your board. I believe you liked him last year as well. Um, like, when healthy, he's produced, right? Like when healthy, he's producing in this offense. Um, you're going right back to the wall when it comes to him then?
Yes, yeah, 21% target share, 8.5 targets per game. Um, Yeah, I mean, like he was limited in terms of playing the full season. He only played
Yeah.
11 games, but when we factor that in, he saw a higher percentage of his routes targeted over what Jerry Jeudy saw. Um, and yeah, he's just been after a slow start to his career, he's just been very consistent. Tight end eight last year, or tight end eight in fantasy points per game, tight end seven, tight end four over the last three seasons. So he's consistently like improving, seeing more volume, seeing more options. Touchdowns, I think, will be a major hurdle, but we saw some rapport between Njoku and Flacco during their time together. Um, yeah, I think I'm just kind of into him at cost, where you're not really paying an arm and a leg. He's tight end six, I believe, off the board. Let me just double check that real quick. He's tight end 12. Pardon me, I'm not even close. So yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
definitely interested at tight end 12.
yeah, I think that's a pretty easy investment there. You mentioned 23% target share last year when healthy. Um, yeah, I think he's probably I want to say this maybe the safest investment on this offense, in my opinion. Let's take a look at the receivers, and we'll talk about the running backs in a minute because there's obviously a new look in this backfield now. But let's talk about the receivers, Jerry Jeudy. I don't want to say resurrected his career or anything like
Yeah,
that,
you could say that. You could say that.
but I think the year everyone wanted from him, they finally got Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver 13 in PPR scoring. Over 1,000 yards for the first time in his career, caught 90 passes, 4 touchdowns, had a 23% target share here. Are you buying Judy this season? Are you chasing that year? I'm not. Um, I'm not. I just the quarterback situation for me is so concerning. It's difficult for me to invest in Judy. Like we have to remember, like a lot of this production, and I'm not saying all of it, but was when Jameis Winston was under center and when Winston was back there, like he was just slinging the shit out of the ball. Like that's what it was. I don't foresee this team slinging it like that this season, and maybe that's where my concerns come from. But where are you at with Judy? Because I know that there's mixed, when you ask people, there's mixed reviews when it comes to Judy.
Yeah, I believe those are valid concerns that you have in terms of worrying about the overall targets and target volume. I'm expecting this offense to not be anything close to what we saw with Winston under center, which Winston under center is basically taking lighter fluid to an offense. We're just accelerating it all. We are cranking that thing up to 10. Tommy Reese, though, the offensive coordinator, the play caller, I envision a lot more slower paced offense, a lot more pre-snap motion with heavy sets, multiple tight ends, a lot more running the ball. They revamped this run game significantly. So I think there's a good chance that we see this team just completely change their identity from what we saw versus the 2024 Jameis Winston led Browns. So I'm with you. I think Jerry Judy's a bit of fool's gold if you're trying to expect another 90 catch, 1,200 yard campaign, which was quite the anomaly. Oh, year five breakouts don't occur. That's not a thing. They're just they're Jameis Winston fueled. That's what they are.
It's two years later than the norm. But
Yep.
yes.
So I'm not buying, man. He's priced at wide receiver 39, which is fine. I think if you're playing in best ball, sure, like it's fine. But I'm not excited to make him a wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 for a fantasy squad and start sit formats. So I would probably be fading.
How about Cedric Tillman? Um, he's someone I feel better about Tillman than I do Judy. Like I probably, when it's all said and done, in best ball specifically, I probably will have more shares of Cedric Tillman than I do Judy. I like again, I haven't done best balls, but I'm gonna safely guess that Judy's going way ahead of Tillman in best ball right now. And I don't think that changes. Um, do you like Tillman in 2025?
Yeah. I've got some issues here because they brought in Deontay Johnson just a week ago, and Deontay Johnson is just the wrench where he could totally screw up your projections and your estimations for what kind of workload a guy like Cedric Tillman sees as the other outside receiver across from Jerry Jeudy. If Deontay steals that role, Tillman could be seeing very, very sparse target volume, which I'm not expecting. I feel like Deontay was too much of a head case last year to fully come back down to earth. But add in the QB uncertainty, add in what I think is going to be lower play volume, and it just kind of snowballs into a fading situation where I'm not super interested. And Tillman battling the injuries last year, like it was pretty early in the Jameis Winston experience where we saw a massive game from Tillman, only for him to never really return. So I'm kind of worried about Tillman's injury and his health status. This was a guy whose injuries also allowed Jalen Hyatt to come out of nowhere and win the Nikoff Award on the same offense that he was in, where Tillman was the leading pass catcher prior to injury. So I'm a bit worried with injuries. I'm a bit worried with all the other things I just mentioned. So I'm probably, yeah, like I said, I'm going to be selective with my shots here. And I'm really just aiming at Njoku right now.
Yeah, there's definitely valid concerns there when it comes to Tillman when his health. Um, you're not on Deontay Johnson, right? Like that, because
No, I just had to mention it though.
yeah. All right, let's talk about this. Are there any? I know the answer, but just to make sure, no other receivers we're looking at here, right?
There's maybe a chance Harold Fannin emerges late in the year, but that would be a contingent on a Njoku injury, I believe. So, no, I don't really think there's anybody else here. Any deep guys that you like?
No, no, this is not the place you want to look for deep pass catchers here. Let's talk about the backfield. They brought in Judkins in round 2. They have Jerome Ford from last year. They also drafted Dylan Sampson in round 4. How do you envision this playing out going into 2025?
Judkins should be the RB1 for sure. He's a super, super athletic prospect, like a 9.7 or 9.8 RAS relative athletic score, top 25 among all backs dating back to 1987 per Math Bomb. So this guy's just a phenomenal prospect coming out of Ole Miss and Ohio State. Um, Again, there's offensive line concerns though. There's the chance that we also don't see him out there on third downs. I think what we saw from Jerome Ford last year was not insignificant as a pass catcher. Dylan Sampson's also an explosive playmaker, can also catch the ball well out of the backfield. I think those two really battle for that RB2 duty slash the third down change of pace role, which if we're not getting a back that's getting pass catching work and we're not expecting the Browns to be an offense that I don't know, let's say top 20 in scoring. Let's say they're outside the top 20 in scoring. We're looking at a first and second down guy that's playing behind a weak line without a lot of touchdown opportunities. Not super excited about Judkins. I'll be honest. I think there's a chance that he exceeds the expectations I have here for sure. I'm not so naive as to think that he won't, but I'm not prioritizing him. I'm telling you that right now. I'm not prioritizing him. I think others will probably be drafting him in leagues that I'm in before I'm interested in there. So it may just be an ADP loss for me where Judkins is just someone I rank lower than consensus because of my outlook on the Browns offense. But that's kind of just where I am right now. Add in the fact that I think Dylan Sampson's a heck of a player. I think he could legitimately steal some work at some point in the year. Um, and it just makes it even more cloudy. It just makes it a situation I want to avoid. What are your thoughts here on Judkins and the Browns RB situation?
So I agree with you that I think he'll be the primary back. But does that mean that he's going to return a good, or he's going to give you a good return on investment? I view him as an RB3, man. Maybe that's, you know, maybe I should see him a little bit higher, but I'm looking at Judkins as a wide running back three, RB3, flex option, and I'm only going to be drafting him in drafts where he falls. Like I don't know if I'm going to be taking him at face value. If I can get a discount price on him, sure. This is a situation where I don't want to be early to the party just because of my expectations for this offense, right? And then kind of what we saw last year, right? Like they were not afraid to move from Jerome Ford to Nick Chubb. Like they passed the baton a lot in this offense last year, and we kind of saw that even when Nick Chubb's like early in his career, like everyone wanted to see Nick Chubb, and took some time to really get him going too. So like, I don't know how they're going to be treating this backfield. So I think Judkins RB3, um, not someone I'm confident in. There's really no one on this offense at all, like for the exception of Njoku, that I am confidently investing in. And Njoku is not even super confident. It's just the fact that I feel like he's underpriced. That's all it is not that I think, you should be going out of your way to get him. But if he's going to tight end 12, I think he's a top 12 tenant. It's a volatile position, and when he's healthy, he's producing at a very high end level, or not elite, but very good level. So I think that that's where I'm at with this offense. It's just I don't trust it. I'm out on Ford. I think if you're investing, I think kind of what you were just like saying about Samson, like if you want, then take a late round flyer on someone like Samson, or just a later, draft pick on someone like Samson, because I don't think you have to invest high draft capital in him. And there's potential for him to carve out a role where you'll come out of the backfield, catch some passes or whatnot. But outside of that, not a backfield that excites me whatsoever, man.
Yeah, you look back at the pre-draft process, and a lot of people were really into Samson. A lot of people were really hyping this Tennessee running back, and it was just kind of unfortunate that he went to a spot where they had previously, the day before, spent round two draft capital to get Judkins. So I think there's a lot to like there. If you're in dynasty rookie drafts, take some swings. Maybe Samson eventually emerges. Maybe we get a Duke Johnson light situation or something like that. Um, Let me put you on the spot real quick. Some either ors at
Let's
the
do it.
RB position. So Judkins right now, he's going off the board at RB 23.
Okay.
Would you rather have, let me list some veterans here. Would you rather have Alvin Kamara or Judkins?
Yeah, man, I'm gonna say Alvin Kamara, but I don't like the quarterback situation. You want this right? That is terrible.
That's
Uh,
fair.
but I'm gonna say Kamara.
James Conner or Judkins?
I'm gonna go Connor.
David Montgomery or Judkins?
I'm a Montgomery guy, man.
Yep.
I'm a Montgomery guy. Yeah.
All right, those guys are all within 10 picks of each other. So I am in lockstep with you. I just was curious if your thought was veteran over rookie back here in this situation.
Yeah, I feel like Montgomery might be the guy that maybe you could, but even him, man, in that offense, like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is the thing. Like, look at the teams we're investing in, right? Like Detroit, New Orleans is not as good, and Arizona's often better than Cleveland's, but yeah, I no, I can't invest in Judkins over those guys. This is where I draw the line, right? A veteran Javonte Williams. I'm probably gonna go Judkins there, but I'll tell you this, it's closer than most people would think for me.
Nice.
Um, so all right. Anything else with Cleveland? Like they obviously they were able to keep Myles Garrett around, like for their defense. I think the defense remains pretty solid here. But the problem with them is they're going to be on the field so much. Like that's the problem with this Cleveland defense. They're probably going to be on the field a lot by the third, fourth quarter. They're going to be gassed. And what good is a tired Myles Garrett, right? Like, no, but anything else here on this team?
No, I think we can move on.
All right, let's jump to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they're still missing a quarterback, Tyler. They're very hopeful that Aaron Rodgers is going to land to them, that he's going to sign with them. That's what they're saying there, that they expect it. They expect him to play with them this year. So they traded away George Pickens. They added DK Metcalf this offseason. They brought back Mason Rudolph. They Darius Slay. They added Kenneth Gainwell. Um, they lost Najee Harris. We know that. We've talked about that here. They lost Justin Fields. They lost Russell Wilson. Um, Talk to me about this team because I still think like this is a good foundation, but without a quarterback in the NFL, you just can't win games. Like it's very difficult to win games, especially when your current lineup is Mason Rudolph, Skylar Thompson, and Will Howard. And I said this on Ray's show earlier. I have a Skylar Thompson rookie card. Have said this. I might have said this on the podcast, but I've said this a couple times today. I have a Skylar Thompson rookie card signed, which is worth nothing right now. All right. I don't think it's going to be worth anything after this season, anyways. How do you envision this playing out, man? And what are your thoughts? I do think they've done a good job this offseason, for the exception of the quarterback. I think they've done a pretty good job. I think they had a solid draft here. I think adding Caleb Johnson was huge for him, running back out of Iowa there. They added obviously some more players on defense, but the biggest hole I see here is the quarterback position. And I think it's the most important position, or one of the most important positions in football.
Yeah, it's very perplexing. I don't see the Rodgers fit here in this offense because he wants to do a lot of freelancing and kind of doing things at his own on the line of scrimmage. And it's not Arthur Smith's offense. It's not typically run that way. So I just don't see it as a culture fit. It might be a fit out of necessity here. Curious to see how this situation plays out because I can't imagine. Fast forward the clock 3 months from now that this is the quarterback situation we're looking at mid-August. I just can't envision it. It just seems so far-fetched. Um, Mason Rudolph, just a huge step backwards in terms of his ability to produce anything. Not even in like the QB3 role in super flex formats am I super interested.
Nope.
Uh, yeah, I don't really have anything positive to say here. I think letting go of Fields and Russell Wilson was a head-scratching move. I think it was head-scratching switching from Fields to Russell Wilson 6 games into the year after Fields led you to a 4-2 start. I'm throwing my hands up with this team. I don't know what the heck they're doing. I think it's frustrating. If I were a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I'd be very angry at this team, and I'd sit back, see how it plays out. But at this time, I think they're really just kind of playing to 2026. I think that they just want to hit the fast forward and the sim season button on 2025.
That's what it looks like, at least, right? On the surface, that's what it appears like. Because if you mentioned it, like I never understood the move from Justin Field last year either. I'm 100% in agreement with you. I thought he was doing a good job. Like, was he
He was.
was he is he elite? No. Like I think you just have to understand, right? But he was doing a good job. He was winning games. He wasn't losing games. He wasn't putting you in a position to lose games. And you could have built off of that. I think if you gave him the chance, you could have built off of that if you're Pittsburgh. And I think maybe they'll look back and say, man, that was a mistake. This is a team that doesn't really, a front office that doesn't make a ton of mistakes like this. And maybe it's not. Maybe it won't be a mistake in the long run. Maybe it will work out for them. But right now we're looking at it from a short window, a short view. We're kind of looking at this in short lens. And right now, the quarterback situation is very, very concerning in Pittsburgh, right? Because no, I cannot envision trusting Mason Rudolph under center for an entirety of the season. I think this is a waste of a season for a team that could be in the mix, right? Like they're consistently in the playoff picture or the hunt. They're consistently winning games. So I think this is going to be a step back year for this team here. I'm out on the quarterback situation in general here, regardless of who's under center, unless they bring in someone or they make a trade. I'm not going to be drafting Mason Rudolph. I look. I saw Skylar Thompson in preseason, and he plays good football. But once you come to the regular season, it's just not good. Will Howard, no. So I'm out. I'm on the quarterbacks here with you. When you look at the backfield, we now have Jalen Warren, Caleb Johnson, Kenneth Gainwell. They have. Do I say Cordero Patterson? Like, do we mention his name? Is it noteworthy? What are you doing with this backfield? Because I feel like the addition of I'm sorry, Caleb Johnson, kind of the excitement for Jalen Warren, not as much as before when there was no one else here. How do you feel about the backfield?
Yeah, I think the Kenneth Gainwell signing was kind of redundant in terms of the skill set that Warren brought to the field as a change of pace, kind of do it all back. But Caleb Johnson's that throwback, typical bruising back that you think of like Pittsburgh Steelers era, 224 pounds. Um, he was the offense, the entirety of the offense at Iowa. Uh, Faced a ton of defenders in the box, yet still super productive in terms of yards from scrimmage, total touchdowns. I foresee him being the centerpiece of the offense, just taking over the Najee role. The problem is, I think he's a less athletic version of Najee, which, I mean, we kind of dunked on Najee from time to time for his lack of athleticism and his inability to put like explosive plays on tape. I just foresee that happening again here, where the difference is, I think there's a better offensive line now in Pittsburgh than when Najee first arrived, where they've been able to rebuild it over these last like 3 or so years through free agency, through the draft, where there's a chance where Caleb sees some better blocking, but I don't think he's going to see less eight-man boxes when it's Mason Rudolph lining up under center or Will Howard under center. So I don't know. He's currently the RB 25 right now in ADP. So he's going after Quinshon Judkins, who we just talked about. Jalen Warren checks in at RB 33. I'd rather take the savings and just go for Warren there, hoping we get some explosive plays, some swing passes, because I'm not excited. I'm not excited about this Pittsburgh offense, and I think that's fair to say given the quarterback situation, the fact Arthur Smith is play calling, and the fact that it looks like it's a year in transition.
Well, that's why I said it's Patterson. So what we had talked about, because
Yeah,
there's gonna be some plays drawn up for him at some point this season.
sure.
Um, Knowing Arthur Smith there, I like it's a tough investment for Johnson. I agree with you. I do feel better about him than Judkins. I do think that there's a clearer path to opportunities here, than Judkins. Um, but where he's going, I think I have to agree with you. Where maybe taking the savings on someone like Warren. I do have Johnson. Let me pull this up. I don't want to. I think I have him RB2 in. No, I'm sorry. He's RB3 for me in my Dynasty League rankings because I do like the long-term outlook, right? But right now, with no quarterback, he's a tough sell. Like I think any backfield with no quarterback is a tough sell because it's the defenses can easily play against that. Um, so if the quarterback situation changes, I'd be more inclined to take someone like Johnson here. But right now, I'd probably say I'm a little gun shy when it comes to him. In 2025, that is.
Yeah. He's got some of that patient zone blocking running style that like Le'Veon Bell exhibits, but I just don't think he has that burst, that explosiveness to take that first step when he sees the cut available to make defenses pay. He's got one of the slowest 10-yard splits in this year's NFL Combine among all backs. I just think he's a less athletic Najee, and I'm just not into it. Um, and I'm fine to be, oh, I'm open to being wrong, especially with when it comes to prospecting. You're never going to hit 100%, but
we got another Jerome Bettis in the house.
possibly,
A
yeah.
baby, a baby
Where
bus. The Steelers live for that, like the 3.3, 3.4, 3. Those little they grind it out, man. They grind out the yards. It only takes 30 carries to get to 90 yards for them, you know. So yeah, look, it's not sexy, man. It's not exciting, but I think volume because of volume, I think there's a case to be made simply out of volume if you do expect him to be that that early down back and that goal line back for Pittsburgh. The problem is again, how many opportunities are going to get in the red zone with Mason Rudolph on the center, which is always going to fall back to that, right? Um, we have to talk about the receivers here. Obviously, no George Pickens. Like, were you surprised that they moved on from him? I'm not because I felt like when they added DK Metcalf, it was kind of like redundancy with George Pickens and Metcalf. And given this offense, it didn't make sense to me to have Pickens and Metcalf in this offense. I'm not saying they can't play in the same team, but in this specific offense, this specific scheme, like it just didn't make sense to me. Where are you at with, what do you think about him being traded away and then Metcalf here in 2025?
Yeah, I thought it was a play for down the road where it didn't make sense right now because we're not seeing all the puzzle pieces yet. Like we're still kind of just getting the outline of things, and we don't really was kind of taking shape. But two tall perimeter wide receivers that are best at like contested catches and making insane catches didn't make sense in this iteration. But maybe we were just not looking through the right lens where we needed to wait until the right quarterback or the right offensive coordinator came into the picture. Um, it kind of stinks. For Metcalf to get this massive bag and then to go to Mason Rudolph throwing him the ball. Hopefully it's a short-term thing. Maybe it's not even the thing. Maybe it's not even Mason Rudolph that starts. But I will mention that like there were 5 games last year where he started for the Titans. And I wanted to zero in on Calvin Ridley's stats during this time period because Ridley's kind of a similar vertical wide receiver just in a smaller body with less flash. But across those 5 starts, Ridley picked up 8, 9, 15, 5, and 6 targets. It's decent volume. 75 yard mark in 3 of 5. So there's still some big play possibility for Metcalf for investors who have him in dynasty leagues or in redraft leagues. They're hoping to see those 8+ targets a game for him. There's certainly a lack of competition for targets here where he should see that, but add in the late trade of Pickens, I just think the door opens for Metcalf to return some usable fantasy outings. They'll just probably be super sporadic with regards to consistency, but there's definitely some spike week potential here. As far as Pickens in Dallas, I like it. We'll see what happens in terms of any kind of on-field fruition and it actually being more than just a Madden transaction where it makes sense in terms of adding a vertical outside receiver to complement what CeeDee Lamb brings in the slot. But on paper, I can't blame Dallas for trying. He's a guy who's still young. You still got him on a decent contract, and you can roll the dice with him because you kind of have swung it. You've struck out with both Jalen Tolbert, uh, heck, Jonathan Mingo. They've now got over there. Brandon Cooks was quickly shown the door.
Gallup
Yeah,
was not a success either. Michael Gallup.
Michael Gallup. Yeah, hit or miss, more miss than hit.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're still looking for that outside piece.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that right there. As far as Metcalf is concerned, I feel like you already know what you're getting into, though, right? Like I feel like we saw that last year from him. It wasn't consistent production. It wasn't, a weekly floor. It was those big spike weeks, and he didn't have those quite often last year. But we've seen it throughout his career, right, where he gives you those massive, massive weeks. Wide receiver 3 on your board?
For Metcalf?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, I think a highly volatile wide receiver 3. I think there are going to be some big weeks. I do think he's going to see decent amount of volume in the passing game simply out of necessity, right? Because you look at the rest of the supporting cast here, man, you got Robert Woods, you got Calvin Austin, you have Scotty Miller, Roman Wilson. It's not great behind Metcalf here. Um, speaking of outside of Metcalf, is there any interest in these pass catchers for you? Like, is there someone you could see stepping up here, carving out a solidified role for this offense?
I mean, we can always hope that like one of the vertical guys like Calvin Austin pans out. Roman Wilson never really got a chance to get going last year, was injured, missed the entirety of 2024 as a rookie. He's a Michigan receiver. I thought he had some good film. He stood out when I was watching JJ McCarthy film entering 2024. But Calvin Austin, I think he would be the answer for me as a guy that can get down the field and essentially do what Metcalf does, just 60 pounds lighter.
Yeah, that is true. So just for perspective, Pickens had a 26% target share last season. He averaged 7.3 targets per game there. So just kind of what you can maybe expect here for someone like a DK Metcalf, because I do think he'll step into a very similar role there. Looking at the tight end, Pat Fryermuth, he averaged 4.6 targets per game, 17% target share there last year. Really, I want to say he hasn't lived up like fully to the expectation. He did finish as tight end 9 in PPR scoring last year. I think that was more due to the 7 touchdowns that he scored. We kind of saw that as in his rookie season where he finished, tight end 13. He had 7 touchdowns that season as well.
Yeah.
Are you in on Freiermuth, man? Like, or do you agree that he hasn't lived up to the expectation, or were you never expecting, I was expecting better production out of him, I guess is the right way to say this, but were you expecting this from him or a little bit better?
No, I didn't view him as this crazy athlete coming out of Penn State. I thought he would be more of like the honestly, I thought him going to Pittsburgh made a lot of sense as him with him being like a Heath Miller replacement where he's like kind of a jag athletically, but able to make those catches on third downs and convert for first downs. Never really be in the mix of like top five status, but top 12 to 15, sure. And I feel like he's typically around that range in terms of ADP. This year he's fallen off quite a bit. Tight end 21. I think that's reflective of the quarterback situation though, and not really knowing what's going on here pass catching wise. But yeah, you mentioned the tight end 9 finish. That surprised me. I didn't even think he finished that high last year. Yeah, like when you look at like the receivers we just mentioned, a lot of question marks. When we look at the QB, a lot of question marks. So sure, there's a path where Freiermuth returns top 10 fantasy production, but drafters are not bullish on it. Tight end 21 in ADP.
It's always going to go down to the quarterback, right? Like I feel like that's the end of it. Like I feel like the correlation there is it, and that's what's preventing it. I feel like that's what's preventing anyone from even considering someone like a Pat Frymuth. I'm not taking him as a tight end 1 either. I would not do that, even though he finished as a top 10 last year. I don't see that path for him this year, simply out of that. Do I view him as a tight end 2? And will I take some if I'm taking a 3 tight end build approach in basketball formats, would I do it? Yeah, maybe. But in redraft, I don't know if I want to invest in Freiermuth at this time. Things can change quickly between now and the start of the season, right? If they get a quarterback that can sling it, or if they get just a reliable arm. That's all. That's all we need here. A reliable arm. I think I'd be okay with it. But with Mason Rudolph, I just don't know. I can trust it there, Tyler. Now, anything else here in Pittsburgh that we haven't discussed or anything we haven't talked about?
Not really. If you're in a super flex or 2QB league, I don't mind a late stash click on Will Howard, but late. Because again, this is a round 6 selection. He did do some of his best games though last year when the lights were the brightest during the playoffs. I think he's worth a swing, but that's again a swing. When I talk swing, I'm talking like round 3 or round 4 of Superflex rookie drafts.
Okay. Okay. And I'm taking notes because we are in one. We are in a rookie draft right now, super flex. So you made a big trade there. You little nice little. Did you got Davis, right? You ended up getting Ray Davis in that trade.
No, I sold Ray
Okay,
Davis.
you sold Ray Davis. Okay,
Yeah, I moved back from like the 111 to like 115. I picked up
a
a
second next year.
a future second, the 201, and moved back like 5 spots in round 1 as well. Um, so yeah, good trade with one of our fellow FG guys. So happy
Okay,
about that deal.
I did see that. I saw that. I think I'm on the clock soon, so let's see. Let's see. Definitely got to make some moves there, Tyler. All right, so we are done with these team previews, and we did beat last week's time for sure. I'm looking at it, and we definitely beat last week's time. Still over the hour, but that's okay. We have four teams. Obviously, a lot to talk about. Let's do what we've been doing every week and every show so far, and that's we're gonna rank the quarterbacks, the running backs, the receivers, and tight ends of this division. And I'll be honest with you, man, this one is not pretty. Not
Mm-mm.
pretty for some of these positions. Um, and I think we're going to be in lockstep here at the quarterback position. And Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, 1, 2. You want to bail me out for 3, 4, man? Because
Can we say neither?
yeah, I'm out. I'm not investing. So yeah, we can do that. I am not investing in the Cleveland situation or the Pittsburgh situation at this time at the quarterback. I will say this. I prefer investing in the Pittsburgh situation if I have to choose one or the other because I prefer Mason Rudolph, I guess, than anyone else here. Like just because, but that doesn't say much. That does not say anything. So, but yeah, it's Lamar Jackson, it's Joe Burrow, and then just go look elsewhere. Don't invest here, guys. All right, let's look at the running back position here. So we got our guy Derrick Henry, we got our guy Chase Brown, and then we have Judkins. And I'm not saying that this is my order. I'm just giving you the guys. We have Judkins, and then I guess Caleb Johnson. Are
Yep.
the four guys we're probably gonna be. So how would you rank those four?
I would do that order. Derrick Henry first, Chase Brown second, Judkins third, and then Caleb Johnson fourth.
Okay, I'll go with Derrick Henry, Brown. I'm gonna go with Johnson, then Judkins. But I like we talked about. I'm not particularly high on either of those two rookie running backs there. All right, let's look at receivers here. I think this one. I think we could. There's a couple guys here, right? Like a couple.
Jamar Chase won?
Yeah, that's easy. Jamar Chase is number one. I'm gonna stay in the same team. I'm gonna go T Higgins number two here. Zay Flowers three. Well, are are you taking Zay Flowers over DK Metcalf right now?
Yes, I would.
Okay,
Purely for the QB situation.
correct, correct. Um, so
I
those
will say
are
they are back to back in ADP right now, so that's a good conversation to have.
yeah. I think you can make a case for either of the two, right? Because
Yeah.
I do think they're very similar as far as they're not going to give you that consistent floor. I think their target shares are going to be around the same, that 20 to 25. Yeah, I think it's going to be that 6 to 7 targets per game for each of them. But then if you start checking off all the boxes, right? And then what's that final box? Who's throwing the football? Give me Lamar Jackson or Mason Rudolph all day, every day, 3 times on Sunday. I don't care. Um, so okay, so that would be our top four. Man, five, is it Judy?
Yeah, it might be Judy, might be Bateman, might be that's it, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, yeah,
Probably Judy.
yeah. I think Judy as well. All right, let's go tight end here. This is a fun one. So I'll start off by saying, out of this group, I don't feel comfortable for the exception of David Njoku as my tight end 1 and 8 in any format. Like, so David Njoku is my number one tight end in this division. He's the only one I would feel comfortable drafting in a redraft league setting. Like, outside of in best ball, it doesn't really matter. But in redraft, he's probably the only one I feel comfortable as my starting tight end. Do you feel the same way?
I do, yes. Yeah, I
Okay.
feel like he's the only one that I'd want to start. But that's only if I punt the position entirely. Um, I think Andrews versus Likely is a interesting conversation where I don't even mind the contrarian selection of Likely ahead of Andrews. I don't think you need to do that. Um, I'm gonna go Njoku number one, Andrews, Likely, Jaceki, and then Fryermuth. I'm gonna put Jaceki over Fryermuth. I think he has more upside.
I am in lockstep with you. I'm not going to change that. I think that that's a good way to approach it. I think you can make a strong argument of Likely over Andrews as well, right? I think really depending on the format too and all that stuff, but not going to change things here. I'm going to go just with that same order that you did right there, Tyler. All right, man. We wrapped this one up. We did good here. I think we covered it. I know that some of these teams they weren't. Some of these teams are not that great. They're not that fun. Some of these offenses they have some massive holes, but we're going to cover every single team. So, tell everyone where they can find you. Tell them what you got cooking, all that stuff, man.
Sure. Thanks again for having me on, Armando. Always a blast to recap these divisions and preview the 2025 outlooks. You guys can catch me over on Twitter at Tyler Buecher. Catch me in our Fantasy Guru Discord, answering all kinds of questions at any time. Tuesday night, we got our roster coach live stream where we talk about all kinds of things. Lately, it's been rookie drafts and the rookie landscape and how that's all shaking up everything fantasy wise. Catch me on Thursday, Fantasy Sports Daily with Ray Flowers. I'll be out there with a brief appearance there with him at 12:30 Eastern. And then all my other content just over there at fantasyguru.com.
Yeah, man. I always say this. Make sure you're checking out Tyler's work. It's great work, great content. He goes on Tuesday nights. I'll be on there with you guys tonight. It'll be you, myself, and Rich Mello. We'll be discussing football. That's all I'm going to say. Football. We could talk any topic of football there. We'll be talking football this evening. I'm on every Tuesday at 12:30 with Ray Flowers. Wednesdays at 12:30 with Justin Fenterman on the show there as well. You can obviously catch all of my work over at fantasyguru.com as well. Tyler, thank you so much for hopping on, man. I always enjoy breaking these things down with you. I love talking football with you, man. I tell you all the time. I could sit here and talk another 2-3 hours with you, but the problem is people won't stay around and listen to that. So we got to cut it short. That's why we're going to be doing more and more episodes here. So this was episode 101. You make sure you rate, like, follow, review the show wherever it is you're consuming it. If you're liking the content, that does go a long way for the podcast. If you have any suggestions, any questions, any topics you want us to discuss here, email those to mindofmarsal at gmail.com, and we'll make sure to talk about that here. Again, guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in. For the great Tyler Buecher, I am Armando Marsal. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's journey through the Mind of Marsal.